Okay, so the emphasis is like this. Yesterday, we started off trying to understand what was the motivation to want to send the spies into the land of Israel. On page 798. What was their motivation? Why, if God wasn't so keen on the idea, how come Moshe decided that it was a good idea? And then the last thing that we left off with yesterday was the idea that Moshe changed Yehoshua's name. He was called Hoshea, and then he becomes Yehoshua. He gives him a Yud, and that's over there in order to be able to give him enough, enough independence not to be swayed by what the other people were going to be telling him. And so let's go from verse number 17 down towards the bottom of the page. Vayishlach Yisam Moshe l'Asor Eretz Canaan. So they've now been sent. They're sitting on the border of the land of Israel right now, and they've been sent in order to be able to scout out what's going to be over there. So he tells them like this. He doesn't just send them in, but he gives them very, very exact instructions about what they're supposed to be looking for and where they're supposed to be going. So you're going to go in from the south and you're going to go up. Take a look and see what's with this land. And take a look and see what kind of people are living over there as well. So what kind of people are they? Are they strong? Are they weak? Are they few? Are they numerous? Take a look and just watch the order. It seems to be clear that the order is working according to, there's a certain kind of what's big and what's small, what's right. So it says like this: are they strong? Are they weak? Strong comes first. Are they many? Are they few? Many comes first. Seems to make sense, no?
Yes.
Uma ha'oretz, and what kind of land is it? Asher yoshev ba hatovahi imra. Is it a good land or is it a bad land? Right, we flipped over the page. Uma ha'orim asher yoshev behena, and what kind of cities do they live in? Hamachanim im b'mivtzarim. Are they open cities or are they fortified cities? Uma oretz ashmena im raza. Is it a fertile land, or is it a lean? I don't know. Is it what was the opposite of fertile? Is it here it says lean, which is barren? Just a barren. Is it a barren land? Hayesh ba'eitzim ayin. Are there trees or there aren't trees? Ve'yichzaktim ve'lakachtim mipri oretz, and you should bring back some fruits from the land. And it was a time of the grape harvest. So it's interesting, right? According to the order that Moshe is giving over here, it's clear that everything seems to be going. It's perfect. I think it's perfectly normal. It's perfectly logical what he's saying. Right? So what's he saying? He's saying, except for one detail over here, he's saying, is it strong? Is it weak? Are there many? Are there few? Right? What about the land? Is it good? Is it bad? The cities, are they open cities? Are they fortified cities? Is it fertile? Is it barren? The land, right? Are there trees? The only one thing over here that doesn't seem perhaps to make sense is when Moshe says about the cities, are they open cities or are they fortified cities? If the general approach that's being taken over here is an approach of, strong is good. What did it say at the beginning, right? Strong, weak, many, few, right? It seems that the first thing that's appearing seems to be the better thing, and the second thing that's appearing seems to be like, it's like a positive dimension, perhaps, and a negative dimension. So what's he saying over here? What about the cities? If I were to ask you, a fortified city is stronger than an open city, or an open city is stronger than a fortified city, we would all say that a fortified city is stronger, no? Yes. So why is the fortified city not come first? It should say like this, that when you came to the cities, Umayorim, what are they? It should say Mivtzarim, they're fortified or they're open.
It's
no? It's the other way around. Right? Why is that? Why would you build a fortified city?
Because they're enemies.
Because there are enemies and you're scared, right? But if you're strong, and if you are many, and if you're not scared of what's going on around you in your neighborhood, then you don't need fortified cities, right? Nobody wants to live in a fortified city, right? I don't know if you know what was going on over here in Jerusalem, for example, right? You know, the beginning of the beginning of the 1900s, when nobody wanted to live outside of the walls of the city because it was very dangerous to live outside. There were bands of marauding Arabs that were there, and you know, it's impossible to imagine today. We can't imagine, right? But just to walk from the old city to Ner Sha'arim, you were putting your life in danger, especially if you went at night. You only have a walled city because what? Because you're scared that somebody's going to come to invade you. But if you're not scared, then you don't need to have a wall. You don't need a wall around your city. You can have a nice open city, and there's plenty of space to expand, and everyone can live nice and calmly, and you know, fantastic, no?
Yeah, a fortified city implies that you're living in fear.
A fortified city implies that you're living in fear, which means like this: if you're following the order over here, if they're strong and they're many, then why would they fortify their cities? Which means paradoxically, if the cities are open, it means that we're talking about a strong, numerous, healthy environment, right? And we've only got to be concerned if you've got walls going around the city. That means that these people are running scared. What Moshe is trying to get them to do is to come back and to tell everybody that the land is a great land, and there's people living on the land, and they're pretty fierce, these people. They're strong, they're numerous, and they're not scared of anybody. And then Moshe is going to say, it doesn't matter though, because God's going to take care of everything. Just one other question over here. The emphasis, we don't think about these things because we don't think about it because it sounds natural. But everything over here, in a certain way, it's opposites, right? So you've got are there many, are there few? Are they strong, are they weak, right? And then all of a sudden it says, what about the land? Is the land tovah hi im ra'ah? Is the land good or is the land bad? It's a little bit of a question, though, because why would we imagine that the land would be bad? You hear the question? Yeah. God wants the Jewish people to come to the land of Israel. The land of Israel is a great place to be, no? Why is there, what it's called a havamina? Why would there even be some kind of a possibility that they come back and they'll say that the land is bad? The land is blessed, right? The land has been blessed by God. God wants us to be in that land. That's the place we're supposed to be. So surely by definition, the land is good.
I think maybe Moshe Reuven was testing us, obviously telling them failed. Because he was testing them maybe to see how...
Oh, okay. So that maybe the obvious answer is that he's giving them the options, and here you decide what it is. You want to come back and say that it's bad? Come back and say that it's bad. It's your decision, right? But I think there's something a little bit deeper over here as well. I think there's an Indian that the land of Israel for sure is good, but the land of Israel is only good when combined together with the Jewish people who are also supposed to be good, right? All of this is happening now when? After the sin of the golden calf. Which means maybe what's being raised over here is the possibility that the land of Israel no longer has that incredible dimension to it, that incredible bounty to it, because we, the Jewish people, have sinned. So that, go and take a look, see what's over there, and let's find out.
But had they not sinned and were about to go into the land, it wouldn't have been different because they didn't sin. The land would be the same. People would be the same.
It's like this, that the land itself, right, is going to produce according to who's living on it. Which means when we come into the land of Israel, we are supposed to turn the land of Israel into something which is flowing with milk and honey. I tell you, the simple, everybody, if you know your history a little bit, from the time of the destruction of the Second Temple until the beginning of the 1900s when the Jews started coming back into Israel, Israel was a barren land. It really was.
Nobody worked it really. Also.
It's not, you know what, I think it's a combination of both things. It wasn't just that nobody was working it, but even those that tried to work it, they found it to be incredibly difficult.
Do you not
Well,
think? Oh, sorry, Rabbi.
So just one second. Why is that? Because the land of Israel is not the same as any other land. Any other land, if you've got minerals inside of you've got minerals inside of the earth, so you can grow things. The land of Israel doesn't work like that. The land of Israel requires spiritual minerals to get it going. So if we'll come back and we'll do what we're supposed to do, take a look. Look what's happened over the last 66 years. It's something which defies any kind of logical explanation. It really does. The land of Israel is a barren little strip, mostly desert, and all of a sudden, look what's happened over here. It's something extraordinary. It has no logical explanation to it at all. That's okay. We're not looking for a logical explanation. We're happy with the illogical explanations. It's fine. Yeah, so you want to say something?
That's exactly the point I was going to hit on. Even since we got the state of Israel, we come here and it was in a much worse state than it is now. So when the Jews come in influx, look how the land's...
Yeah, it's unbelievable, right? That we can draw things out of the land that other people aren't able to do. And I tell you, it's interesting. According to the rabbis, it's a chesed, it's a kindness from God. Because if the land of Israel would have been a bountiful land and it would have been a land where everybody that lived over here was able to get it to produce and it would be fertile. So when we were ready to come back to the land of Israel, well, who on earth was going to give it up, right? All the countries that came, all of the empires that came and conquered the land of Israel, what was Palestine at the time, right? All those empires that came and conquered Palestine, they would never have given it up to begin with. But at the end of the day, they gave it up because there wasn't anything here anyway. It just wasn't worth the trouble. You know, the British gave it up at the end because, well, what was here? The only natural resource that exists in the land of Israel is falafel balls. I mean, that's not exactly, you don't see these things traded on the commodities market, that's for sure not, right? No, buy futures and falafel balls, I don't know. What do you say?
They're delicious.
That's the problem. You see, not only is the only natural commodity here in Israel falafel balls, but we eat up our own natural commodity, right? Instead of selling it, right, we eat it. That's no good. Verse number 21. V'yalu v'yatures ha'aretz. So they go into the land of Israel and they start touring around. Mimidbar Tzin ad Rechoiv levoi Chamas. And they're going from the midbar of Tzin, from the desert of Tzin. V'yalu b'Negev, and they come from the south and they go up. V'yavo ad Chevron, and over there they come to Chevron. V'sham achiman sheishai v'tamai yelidei hanak. And we come across some people over there, right? Achiman sheishai v'tamai, who are all giants, all living over there in the area of Chevron. V'Chevron sheva shanim nivnata lifnei tzom Mitzrayim. Verse number 23. Ve'yavoy ad nachal Eshkol, ve'yichusu misham zmora ve'eshkol anavim echad, ve'yisol bamot bishnayim, u'min harimonim u'min atheinim. Now, so far, everything sounds okay, right? They've gone into the land of Israel. They're following the route that Moshe gave them to follow. And what did Moshe tell them to do? To bring back some fruits. So it was the grape harvest. So obviously, the first thing they're going to bring back is going to be what? It's going to be some grapes. Not only did they bring some grapes, but they brought back a pomegranate and a fig as well. The problem is that they brought back fruits that were completely oversized. They were, giant, right? It says over here, how did they take the fruit? How did they take the grapes? Vayisau bamot bishnayim. That they bore it on a double pole. I mean, we've got this great big cluster of grapes that's being taken, and in order to be able to carry this thing, it's incredibly heavy. So they have two poles, one on each side of the cluster, with the grapes sitting inside, and then they've got 4 of these spies holding it behind and 4 holding it in front, right? So we've got 4 on the left-hand side and 4 on the right-hand side, and they're carrying this cluster of grapes around. That's pretty impressive, right? And then they've got a pomegranate, which is like the size of a who knows what, like. And they've got a fig, and they're schlepping this stuff along wherever they go. They're carrying this stuff along. If anybody here was mathematically inclined, how many spies were there? 12. How many people are carrying fruit?
8.
8 plus one person carrying the pomegranate, and one person carrying the fig. 10. What about the other two?
The two
The other two were the good
Oh, the other two, the righteous ones. Caleb and Yoshua were not prepared to get it. They weren't going to get involved in this. They wouldn't do it. Right? Why not? Because they understood, I'm sure, I wasn't there, right? But I'm sure that there were all different kinds of fruits, different sizes that could have been brought back. Their agenda was to bring back fruit that was so abnormal.
Who's the Jew?
The spies.
The 10 bad ones, yeah?
The 10 spies, right? Their agenda was to bring back fruit that was so abnormally large that your initial reaction would be, wow, that's a grape, right? But then you would stop and think about it for a minute. You'd say, hold on a second, this is not normal. Like, what kind of place is this? It's interesting, right? You got a bracha on something, you got a blessing on something, so it grows, right? But when the blessing is too much, it becomes something which is almost grotesque. So they understand, Caleb and Yoshua understand that what? They're not bringing back these fruits to show everybody how fertile the land of Israel is. They're not bringing back these fruits to show everybody what incredible growth there is in the land of Israel. They're bringing back these fruits in order to what? In order to show that this is you know what? Yeah, it's an interesting place, huh? But you know what? I mean, there are giants that live around here, and there are giant fruits that live around here, and I don't know, right? Do we really want to go into there? So the Zohar Kodesh says something absolutely fascinating over here, something really quite extraordinary. The Zohar says that from the time that 10 out of the 12 spies went into the land of Israel, their intent was already wrong. Their intentions were wrong. What was their intention? Their intention was very simple. It sounds, it sounds rather childish, actually. Right now, they're in a position of leadership. Spoke about that yesterday. When the Jewish people go into the land of Israel, there's been a nevuah. If you remember the end of last week, there were these two people, Eldad and Medad, who prophesied that what was going to be, that Moshe was going to die before the Jewish people go into the land of Israel, and Yoshua is going to take them into the land of Israel. Which means these people, they make a little calculation, probably a very correct one, actually. What is the first thing that's going to happen when Yoshua takes over? It's that there's going to be a changing of the guards, right? That whoever was put into place in leadership capabilities whilst Moshe was in charge may not be the same people that Yoshua would like to have in those leadership positions. So it's almost as if they're saying, the first people who are going to lose their jobs is themselves. So they say they've now got an agenda. Says the Zohar, they now have an agenda. They're going to go into the land of Israel, and they're going to come out of the land of Israel, and they're going to come back and they're going to say that this is not, it's a fantastic place, but it's not a place for us to go to, in the hope that what? They'll stay in the desert. The whole time they'll stay in the desert, Moshe will continue leading the Jewish people. The whole time that Moshe leads the Jewish people, then they'll keep their jobs.
But weren't they only at the 50 level?
Yeah, they were in charge. They were in charge of 50. But it's fascinating, isn't it? You would say like this: the truth of the matter is, like we mentioned yesterday, with the hierarchy of leadership, there's one person in charge of 10, right? Which means that you've got 60,000 people who are in that level of leadership. There's 12,000 people in charge of 50. Well, we're not talking about very high up the totem pole over here. And the Meraglim came from the Sari Chamishim. They came from the people in charge of 50. So you're saying like this, which I think is that's a logical approach, which means so even if they lose their jobs, what did they lose? Being in charge of 50 people, they are one of another 12,000 people on the same rank as they are. If you wanted to say that they were in charge of 100, okay, that's already, maybe you're getting somewhere. That's a little bit more important. You've got 6,000 of them. Or if they're in charge of 1,000, there are 600 of them. Right? But at the end of the day, they're pretty low down in the pecking order. And yet they're busy making calculations that they'll lose their position of authority. which really just goes to prove something really very, very fundamental, I think. Which is, what is it? That it doesn't matter what your position is. The fact that you have a position is something of the most tremendous importance. In your eyes, you can turn, you can turn anything into anything. You can turn the small. I don't remember all the language that he uses, but Jackie Mason has got a little incredible monologue where he talks about Jewish mothers and how they turn their children into these, superstars. And I don't remember what he calls it, but a truck driver, becomes the director of, whatever it is. It's like you can turn it into anything. What does that mean exactly? Well, he drives a truck, yeah? Not that there's anything wrong with driving a truck, but you know what? It's like, the assistant vice president. What exactly are you? What do you mean the assistant vice president? Where does that put you exactly? What's going on? But the whole idea is what? The whole idea is that you're making somebody feel important by giving him bits and pieces of rank. Yeah? The army are experts. You've got a lance corporal, and you've got a corporal, and you've got a sergeant, and you've got a sergeant major. And if you want to tell me there's any difference between a lance corporal and a corporal, I mean, come on, it's an extra stripe. But people in the British Army, you've got to stay in the army for a long time in order to get that kind of a rank. It means something. What does it mean? I mean, for us, it's difficult to understand, right? But it's exactly the same thing in the corporate world as well, which means if you were to say that people, jostle and fight with each other in order to be elevated in the corporate world, in order to get an enhanced salary, to get a raise in salary. So we can all relate to that, right? But people do this in order to get a different title. The salary sometimes is not enhanced at all. And yet they'll position themselves and they'll maneuver themselves. And all it is, all it means is instead of you having to go to buy the coffee in the morning for everyone else, you can get to give it out. Or you can get to stir, the department head's coffee before you give it. I mean, it's like, it doesn't mean anything. So Nebuch, you're right, these people, what are they? Sari Chamishim, they're in charge of 50 people. They're not very important. They're really not. But they're already making calculations that if we go into the land of Israel, we're going to lose our position. We'll be people in charge of 50 emeritus, right? That's we don't have a position anymore. You know what? That's a pretty good example as well, isn't it? What on earth is an emeritus, for goodness sake? Professor emeritus. You have Rabbi emeritus as well, which means that the rabbi he's now retired, but he still lives in the community, and now we're stuck with not being quite sure what do you do with him? Like, we have to honor him, but how do we honor him because he's not the rabbi anymore, but he was the rabbi, so so he becomes a rabbi emeritus. Does it mean anything? It's a title. You get a title, you feel good, no? That's what's going on over here as well. Which means like this, that the Kalev and Yoshua, they understand that if they were going to bring back these fruits to show everybody just how incredibly fertile the land of Israel is, they would have brought back 2 other fruits as well, and they would have carried them. They would have brought back grapes, and they would have brought out pomegranates and figs, and maybe they would have brought back olives and dates as well, which are all the fruits that the land of Israel is famous for. And everything would have been fantastic. But what do they understand? They understand the agenda here is no good. And they're saying, we're not getting involved over here. We're not doing this. So over there, this place was called Nachel Eshkol. Eshkol means a cluster of grapes. Because that's where they took this cluster of grapes from. Verse number 25. Now, I want you to, this part over here is absolutely critical. We're going to see, we're still paying for all of this, up to and including today, we're still paying for this. But it took them 40 days to go around the whole of the land of Israel. I mentioned yesterday, right, that they were going around in an air-conditioned, Israel Bonds bus, but they weren't really. They went by foot. You can't do it. It's not possible. Which means it's clear from the very beginning that they're going into the land of Israel and God is taking them along. God is there with them the whole time allowing them to do things that are physically not normally possible to do, right? And they still come back and they still say that this is like a godless place. It's astonishing what we are able to convince ourselves of, right? It's absolutely astonishing. You know, there's a very famous story they tell. This went down in the annals of outreach history. Rabbi Noach Weinberg, the late Rosh Hashiva in Eish Torah, he was once speaking with a young guy, American. And he's talking with him and he's trying to convince him to the idea of staying in yeshiva for a little bit, to learn a little bit, just to try to establish a little bit of a relationship with God. And he's not getting anywhere. So finally, Rav Noach says to him, what is it with you? So this fellow says to him, me and God, we're like this. Rav Noach says, what are you talking about? This guy's not the least bit religious, nothing. He says, what are you talking about? He says, I'll tell you a story. He said, I love motorcycles. I love motorbikes. And my greatest pleasure is on Sundays to go out into the mountains and to drive my motorbike through the mountain roads and to, really let it go. And he says, once I'm driving up this pretty steep mountain road and I come around a corner and coming the other way, barreling down this road is an enormous truck. And I realized, he says, that, that I couldn't get past him. He couldn't stop. So there were really only two options. I could have carried on driving and gone slap bang straight into him, or I could have just turned the bike off the road and gone over the side of the mountain. He says, that's what I chose to do. And I went off the side of this mountain. And he said, the one thing I realized was I got to keep holding onto this bike. That was like absolute. He said, and what happened? The bike tipped over and I let go. And I'm hurtling down, and the bike is hurtling down, he says, and I dropped into a tree. Unbelievable. He says, I'm stuck in this tree with scratches. That's all. Nothing else has happened to me. He says, in the meantime, the truck driver managed to stop, further down, and he came back, and other people came to help, and they got me down. He says, I was 100% okay. I just had some scratches. Nothing broken. No concussion, no nothing. He says, you see, me and God, we're like this. He sent me that tree to save me. So Rav Noach looks at me, he says, that's a great story. He says, tell me, he says, who sent the truck? You hear? We'll justify anything in order for us to be able to do whatever we want to do. God goes traveling with the Meraglim, with the spies through the land of Israel. For 40 days he takes them around in a speeded up, circle in order for them to see everything they need to see. And then they come back and they say, I don't know, there's no way we can survive in this place. It's not going to work. So interestingly enough, retroactively, it turned out to be a big chesed. God said that for each day, we're going to see there's a pasuk, but for each day that they went through the land of Israel, so they're going to get a year stuck in the desert. They're going to have to wait in the desert for a year. So retroactively, it worked out in their benefit, because if it would have taken them 80 days to go through the land of Israel, they would have had to wait 80 years before they could go into the land of Israel afterwards. Let's have a look and see what happens over here. Now listen to this, because what did they do? They came back, and the first thing they did when they came back was that they went running to Moshe, to Aaron, and to all of the people. That's not right? What should they have done? They should have gone and given their report to Moshe. Who sent them? Moshe sent them. But they know that if they go to give their report to Moshe, then by the time they've given over their report to Moshe and then the word gets out, everything will be watered down. We're going to see over here the most incredible dimension of national hysteria. You don't need very much. We've got 10 people over here who are able to turn a nation of 600,000 men into a bunch of crybabies. It's quite impressive. It really is, right? So they know better than just come to Moshe. They go to Moshe and to Aaron and to everybody who wants to hear. Here, this is what's going on. And they show them these fruits, like it says, right? The sages say, they pick up these fruits and they tell everybody, look at the size. And then they say, everybody, look at the size. Again, the first reaction of everybody is, wow, unbelievable. The second reaction of everybody is, whoa, hold on a second. This is not normal, right? Verse number 27. Vayisapru loy vayomru banu el haaretz asher shalachtanu. We came back from the land that you sent us to. V'gam zavat chalav udvash hi v'zeh piriyah. It's a land flowing with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. So far, so good. Everything is great, right? And then verse number 28. Efes ki az ha'am hayoshev ba'aretz ve'orim b'tzurot gdolot ma'od v'gam yilidei anak ra'inu sham. Efes, but, whenever you put a but at the end of a sentence, it means you don't mean what you just said. Right? How many times have we mentioned this, right? I'm sorry, I'm really truly sorry, but that means you're not really truly sorry. Or I don't mean to be offensive, but right, that means that you're about to be offensive, right? Which means that when they come and they say that it's truly a land flowing with milk and honey, but Ephes, what they're about to do now is they're about to put their own agenda, lay their own agenda on top of what they've just described. And they're describing a beautiful place, that's for sure. Ephes ki aza'am yoshev ba'aretz v'arim b'tzuros gzolos ma'oy v'gam yilidei anak, that the people that live over there, they are very powerful. And the cities are greatly fortified. What did we learn just before? Fear. If the cities are greatly fortified, the greater your fortification is, the greater your fear is. For sure, right? Which means that if the people would have been listening to what they were saying and analyzing what they were saying properly, then what would they have understood? Oh, okay, you know what? There's already a chink in their armor over here, right? They're scared. They're running scared. And they saw these giants. That's to put a little bit of fear. And then it says, verse number 29, Amalek yoshev be'eretz hanegev. Amalek, they're sitting down in the south. Here, who knows anything about the land of Israel? The Negev? What is the Negev? What is it?
Prairie, it's a dry
Desert, right? Why would Amalek be sitting in the south? Because they're not strong enough to overcome any of the other nations that are living further up. The further up it is, the more fertile it becomes, right? So why did they choose to say Amalek? Amalek, according to the sages, Amalek was the weakest of all the nations. And yet they choose out of all the nations to begin with Amalek. Amalek yoshev be'eretz hanegev. Why? Because Klal Yisrael is scared of Amalek. We've come across Amalek before, right? After Har Sinai. After Kriyas Yamsuf. After the splitting of the Red Sea, Amalek come and they attack. And even though they lost the war, they made inroads into our sense of invincibility. Which means these guys, they know exactly what they're doing over here. They're preying on the Jewish nation's insecurities. You hear? The truth is they should have come along, they should have said, guys, Amalek, they're down in the south. These guys are finished, right? But they don't do that. They say Amalek, because the very word Amalek, it instills fear inside of the Jewish people. We're talking about incredibly powerful nations that are living inside of the land of Israel. And they start listing them one after the other, right? And these are the nations that the Jewish people are going to have to overcome in order to be able to go and live over there. How are they going to do this? They're a bunch of slaves. They just left Egypt a year ago, right? So it's true they went out armed, but they don't know very much about fighting. They've been slaves for 210 years, right? They don't know very much about what's required over here. These nations, what are they? They're bloodthirsty. They are powerful. And it's like a no-brainer, no? Well, we can't go in there. Vayahas Kalev esa'am el Moshe. And it says that Kalev, Vayahas, he made everybody quiet. It's a very interesting syntax over here. Vayahas Kalev esa'am el Moshe. That Kalev made them quiet, el Moshe, towards Moshe. What does that mean? Moshe right now is not the blue-eyed boy of the Jewish people. He really isn't. Moshe has hyped them up that they're going to go into the land of Israel. It's a great place to go. And now they've come back and they said, you know what? It might be a nice country, but there's no way that we can't do this. And now everybody's agitating against Moshe. And Kalev, who's one of the righteous spies, gets up and he gets everyone to be quiet. How did he do it? So interestingly enough, according to the sages, he gets up and he tries a little bit of reverse psychology. So he gets up and he says, guys, he calls Moshe Ben Amram, the son of Amram. Ben Amram is normally used as a derogatory term. You know, if somebody would call you by your family name instead of they know what your first name is, but they want to call you by your family name instead. Right? So he gets up and he says, you think this is all Ben Amram has done for us? He's like, wow, you know, what's Kalev he's gonna launch into a tirade against Moshe over here. This is gonna be great, right? And Kalev starts telling them, not only did he bring us to the land of Israel, but he gave us the manna to eat, and he gave us the water to drink, and he took us out of the land of Egypt. And he's trying to get them to, you know, what is it with you people? Moshe's taking care of you. You think he's not going to take care of you now as well? Doesn't work. Kalev says, he says, I don't understand you people. If Moshe says we can do it, then we can do it. But already now the spies are already, they're not even saying things now. Up until now they were saying things which were true, but it was with their own, they're putting their own perspective on it, right? Now they're saying, no, there's no way that we can go in. Ki chazaku mimenu, there's no way that we can do it. And they started speaking badly about the land of Israel. And they said, they start telling, you know, every single place that we went, you know, people were dying. And they're enormous, the people are enormous over there. This is a bad place to be. To the Stipler, one of the great giants from the previous generation, of Yaakov Yisrael and Kanievsky, has the most incredible little chiddush over here. It says in the Gemara, it says that as the spies were going through the land of Israel, so there were funerals going on the whole time. Right? Lots of people were coming out for the funerals, burying the dead. There was some kind of an epidemic that was going on. So Yipshat says a Stipler like this: we understand that the spies come back and they say it's a land which eats its inhabitants. It's a bad place to be. It's not good. And the Stipler said if it was really a land which ate its inhabitants, then nobody would come to bury anybody. You know, historically, when the Black Plague was raging its way through Europe, nobody went out to bury it. They just threw the bodies out the window. Nobody was interested in burying anybody. They had to cart them off. And the people, of course, that were involved in digging the pits to put the dead bodies into, they caught the plague and they died. Nobody wanted anything to do with it, which means, says a Stipler, if there were huge amounts of people coming to the funerals, what does it mean? That this is not, it's not a land which eats its dead. Which eats its inhabitants, but rather it's a land which is a good land and something strange is going on. Say the sages, HaKadosh Baruch Hu caused that people should be preoccupied with burying the dead in order to not pay any attention to this delegation that's passing its way through. But here, once again, you'll understand it how you want to understand it. They've got their own agenda. They want to give over whatever it is that they want to give over. They want to make sure that the people are not going to be happy with the idea of going through, so they paint it out to be something pretty bad. ושם ראינו את הנפילים, בני ענק מן הנפילים. ואני בעיניהם כחרבים, וכן היינו בעיניהם. And we saw these enormous people, And we were like grasshoppers in our eyes, and that's what we were like in their eyes. And explain the Meforshim like this, most incredible idea. Again, these people were giants, right? And the Meraglim, the spies, were regular people, regular size. And they felt they were like grasshoppers compared to them. Now, the way that a grasshopper is to a regular person, that's the way they felt towards these giants. Oh, pretty big, right? But that's okay, because that's their feeling, right? Nobody can say that what they're saying is not true. However, what do they say afterwards? V'chein hayinu beinehem, and that's how we were in their eyes. Say the Meforshim. How do you know? Now you're painting, like you're painting something else over here. You're painting something which is not right. You want to say how you feel, that's fine.
Embellishing. It's like they're...
Oh, but what are they doing? They're embellishing it on they're saying this is how the giants felt, and they've got no idea how the giants felt. There's an incredible insight into human nature over here, there really is. When a person's got a particular mindset, they imagine everyone else has got that same mindset as well. Right? To turn it into something good. You know, let's say you go and you see the most beautiful view. You're completely and absolutely amazed and overwhelmed by the beauty of what you're looking at. Right? It is inconceivable in your mind that anyone else won't appreciate that view. You see a beautiful painting. It's inconceivable. What do you mean? What do you mean you don't like it? You hear a fantastic shir, and you walk out, and on the way out, you say to the person next to you, that was like the best shir I've ever heard, right? And he says, well, I don't know. It was okay. Or, I don't know, I don't think it was very good at all. And you know, your first reaction is, how on earth can that be? This shir was fantastic. How on earth could anybody not have seen it like I did? The unfortunate reality is, of course, that the minute the other person says what he said, that already plants a little seed of doubt in your own mind, which means that, oh, you know what, at some point it'll take another couple of steps, but it's like at some point it's like, oh, you know what, so maybe that view wasn't, quite as beautiful as I thought it was, or maybe that shir wasn't quite as great as I thought it was. That's a problem. We dampen people. It's very difficult to get people enthusiastic. I mean, just look around the room, yeah? But however difficult it is to make people enthusiastic, it is in ratio, it is as easy to dampen their enthusiasm. It doesn't take very much, it really doesn't. Along come the Meraglim, and they say the land is a great land, it's very beautiful, it really is, it's got lots of wonderful things in it, but... And then they start listing everything that's no good, and the next thing you know, that's it. All of a sudden, everybody's like, wow, this is, we can't do this, we can't go in there, this is a terrible place to go. Again, where's your sense of perspective? God took you out of Egypt. God split the sea for you. God gave you food. God gives you water. God gave you the Torah. You think he's not going to take you into the land of Israel. What are you scared of? But it doesn't work like that, because their enthusiasm has now been dampened. That's it. It's been taken away. So maybe we'll finish with one last idea over here. Something very beautiful, mamish beautiful. And we'll see, over here it didn't work. But it says like this. They called this first time that the land of Israel is being called by the Jewish people a land zavat chalav udvash. A land flowing with milk and honey. That's a very famous description. It's a very interesting description, no? What do you mean, a land flowing with milk and honey? So the honey comes normally from dates. So that at least we can understand, because that's one of the 7 species that the land of Israel is very famous for. But milk? Well, what's the idea of a land flowing with milk and honey? So I once saw, they said in the name of the Chidushei Arim, the first Ger Rebbe, the most incredible idea. There are 2 different kinds of foods which are kosher, which really should not be kosher. One of them is honey and one of them is milk. Right? Milk shouldn't be kosher because milk originates from the blood. Right? The blood of the animal gets turned into, goes through a process and ends up being milk. Which means that we're not allowed to eat blood. Torah says we're not allowed to eat blood, right? Which means that if we're not allowed to eat blood, you could just take that one step further and say, if I'm not allowed to eat blood, then I'm not allowed to eat milk, surely. And yet the Torah says it's okay to eat milk. And bees' honey is something which we shouldn't be eating either, according to logic. Why? Because the Gemara says, Hayotze min atome tome, something that comes out of something impure is impure. That's why an egg which is laid by a non-kosher animal, a non-kosher bird, we can't eat that. It has a din of being not kosher, just like the bird itself. Anybody wants an ostrich omelette, right? You'll have to think again, because you can't have it. Ostrich is not kosher, therefore its eggs are not kosher. How come honey is kosher? Comes out of the bee, no? Bees are not kosher animals, therefore, ayotze min atome tome. So the Gemara makes a whole calculation that it doesn't really go through the bee, that it's made from the outside and it's transferred, and this happens and that happens. Says the Chidush Arim, milk and honey are two foods which are supposed to be impure and they become pure. Says the Chidush Arim, the most beautiful idea. The land of Israel is a land which can turn something impure into something pure. We, the people, right? It can turn us from impure beings into pure beings. And that's why the land of Israel is described as a land flowing with milk and honey. It's not just potential, it's flowing. The potential is flowing, it's there. All you've got to do is tap into it to turn yourself from something impure into something pure. Over here it didn't work. And over here they went in impure and they came out impure. And explain the rabbis. When it says that they had to spend 40 years wandering around in the desert, one day for each year, so ask the rabbis a very simple question. But really it's only when they came back that they told over that the land is no good. So how come the 40 days that they were touring around the land of Israel, how come that's included in the calculation? So explain the sages, like we mentioned before, that the Zohar says that they went in, their agenda was wrong to begin with, which means that from the moment that they went into the land of Israel, they're already working towards this moment over here when they're going to come back and say what they're going to come back and say. And therefore, the 40 days retroactively are included inside of the decree that God is going to decree over the Jewish people. Mitzvah Hashem, tomorrow we'll come across that tomorrow. We'll take a look and we'll see. In the meantime, we'll stop over here.